Jake Carter was a man used to quiet moments. After years in the Army Rangers, he'd seen the worst of the world, battles, loss, and pain. Now retired, he lived a simple life in Knoxville, Tennessee. On a cold and rainy Tuesday, he found himself sitting in the back corner of the town library. The air smelled of old books and wet earth. Jake was nursing a cup of coffee that tasted more bitter than good. His eyes focused on the worn pages of a mystery novel. The library was his little escape from the noise of the world, a place where memories faded for a while. But that morning, everything changed the moment she walked through the door. She moved with a quiet strength, like someone who had learned to hide her feelings deep inside. Her black coat hugged her tall frame, and her dark hair fell in soft waves, framing a face that looked tired but proud. There was something about her eyes, sharp, full of stories, and a bit guarded. When she looked at Jake, it was as if she already knew parts of him no one else had seen. She didn't rush or stumble. She came in calm, as if she belonged in that quiet world too. She walked right up to Jake's table, her voice soft but steady when she said, "You were in Kandahar." Jake blinked, lowering his book. She wasn't someone who wasted words. There was no hesitation in her tone, only certainty. "You don't forget eyes like yours," she added. For a moment, the rain outside stopped, and all Jake could hear was the sound of her words. Who was she? How did she know about Kandahar? It was a question he wasn't ready to answer, but her presence stirred something deep inside him. Curiosity mixed with caution. Her name was Evelyn Cross, and from the very beginning, she kept her past locked tight. She wasn't from Knoxville, and she didn't talk about where she came from. Instead, she asked Jake about his missions, places he hadn't spoken about in years. She wanted to know what had happened in Kandahar, especially the last mission that changed everything. Jake was surprised by her knowledge and the way she pushed for details, but Evelyn was careful never to reveal too much about herself. Something told Jake that she was searching for answers, maybe about something painful. Evelyn returned to the library almost every day. Each time she grew a little more comfortable and a little more real. Jake noticed the way she studied his face, looking for truths he wasn't sure he wanted to share. One evening, when the sun was setting and the library was nearly empty, Evelyn's walls came down just a little. Her voice cracked as she said, "My brother died in Kandahar." She looked away, afraid to meet Jake's eyes. "They said it was insurgents, but I know it wasn't that simple." Her words hung in the air, heavy and filled with pain. Jake felt a sharp ache inside. He knew what war could hide. The secrets, the cover-ups, the people who gave orders from far away, never facing the cost. Evelyn's brother was part of that story, and now she was caught in the middle of it. But more than that, Jake saw the loneliness in her. She was carrying grief and anger that no one else could understand. And here was this stranger, a soldier who had lived the nightmares she feared, sitting across from her, the only person who might help her find the truth. At the same time, Jake struggled with his own feelings. Evelyn stirred something inside, him that had been asleep for a long time. Her courage, her pain, and her need for answers pulled him closer, but there was a warning in his heart. He had learned to protect himself, to keep his emotions buried deep. Yet with Evelyn, the lines blurred. Their conversations shifted from facts to stories, from missions to dreams. She talked about her brother, not just as a soldier, but as a person. A brother, a friend, someone she loved. And Jake began to realize that this woman wasn't just looking for knowledge. She was looking for a way to heal. But the deeper Evelyn went into her past, the more questions Jake found himself asking. Who really gave the orders that led to her brother's death? And why was Evelyn so determined to uncover a truth that many wanted to keep buried? It was clear that the story she was chasing wasn't just history. It was personal. Jake knew he couldn't turn away. Whatever the cost, he was going to help her find answers. Jake had started to dig deeper. The past wasn't easy to revisit, but he knew Evelyn needed the truth, even if it was painful. He spent long nights searching, through old files and faded reports, looking for anything connected to Evelyn's brother and that last mission in Kandahar. The more he looked, the clearer one name became: Colonel Marcus Thorne. Thorne was a man Jake remembered well, a cold, powerful officer who made decisions from behind a desk, far away from the soldiers who carried the real risks. Thorne's name kept popping up in reports about risky orders and secret deals, and worst of all, in connection with the mission that ended in tragedy for Evelyn's brother. Jake knew this wasn't just about war anymore. It was about betrayal. Evelyn's brother had died because someone wanted to cover up a mistake, or worse, something darker. But Jake hesitated to tell Evelyn what he had found. How could he break this news to her without breaking her completely? He knew her pain was deep, and this truth could shatter the fragile hope she still held on to. But secrets don't stay hidden for long. Evelyn sensed something was wrong. One evening when they met at the library, her voice was sharp and broken. "You knew," she said, "and you didn't tell me." Her eyes burned with hurt and anger. "Did you want the truth or revenge?" Jake asked, feeling the weight of every word. "I wanted honesty," she replied. "But maybe soldiers only know how to follow orders and break hearts." With that, she walked away, leaving Jake alone, with his guilt and the growing storm between them. For days, silence hung heavy between them. Jake was haunted by her words, and Evelyn wrestled with the betrayal she felt. But Jake knew he had to face Colonel Thorne. He couldn't run from the man who held the key to everything. The next time Jake saw Thorne, it was in a smoky bar near Nashville, a place filled with men who looked dangerous and didn't ask questions. Thorne was there, surrounded by bodyguards and shadows, still smiling like he controlled the world. "Carter," he said casually, as if old grudges were just games. "Still chasing ghosts?" Jake didn't waste time. He slammed the file with all the proof he had onto the bar. "Evelyn Cross, her brother died because of you," he said, voice low but fierce. Then everything exploded. Fists flew, drinks shattered, and the bar erupted into chaos. Guards lunged at Jake, but he was ready. Years of training took over. He moved fast and hard, knocking down one man, slamming another into a jukebox. The fight was brutal, raw, and desperate. But through it all, Thorne laughed, like he was untouchable. "You think truth matters to men like me?" he sneered. Jake's voice was quiet but deadly. "No, but it matters to her." That night, Jake left the bar bloodied and tired, but more determined than ever. He knew Thorne was dangerous, but he wasn't just fighting for himself anymore. He was fighting for Evelyn, for justice, and for the chance that they both could find peace. Jake knew the fight wasn't over. Thorne was dangerous, and Evelyn was still hurting from the betrayal and the secrets they'd uncovered. But something inside Jake pushed him forward. Not just anger or justice, but hope. He wanted to protect Evelyn, to help her find peace. One rainy evening, Jake invited Evelyn to meet him at a small diner on the edge of town. The place was quiet, warm, and full of old memories. As they sat across from each other, the tension in the room was thick, but something had shifted. Evelyn's eyes held a fragile trust that Jake hadn't seen before. "I'm scared," she said quietly. "Not just for what happened, but for what comes next." Jake reached across the table, his hand steady and sure. "We face it together. No more secrets." That moment broke the walls between them. The past was still heavy, but they didn't have to carry it alone. Together, they worked to bring the truth into the light. Jake contacted a trusted journalist friend who had a reputation for exposing the powerful. They gathered evidence, documents, witness stories, and Jake's own experience. It wasn't easy. Thorn had people watching their every move, and there were times when fear almost took over. But Evelyn showed a strength that surprised Jake. She wasn't just a grieving sister anymore. She was a fighter. One night, as they prepared the final report to be published, Evelyn looked at Jake and smiled. "You saved me," she said simply. "Not just from Thorn, but from myself." Jake felt a warmth spread through his chest. For the first time in a long time, he believed in a future that wasn't defined by pain or loss. But the biggest test came on the day the story went public. Thorn didn't go down quietly. Instead, he used every power he had to discredit them, to twist the truth, and to threaten those involved. The small town where Jake and Evelyn lived suddenly felt like a dangerous place. Friends hesitated, and enemies whispered. Yet, in the middle of this storm, Jake stood firm. He and Evelyn faced Thorn one last time, not with fists, but with courage and truth. At a town hall meeting packed with neighbors, reporters, and local leaders, Evelyn spoke with a voice that was both soft and strong. She told her story, not just of loss, but of hope, of fighting for justice even when it seemed impossible. The room was silent. Then slowly, people began to applaud. Thorn's power was cracking. His lies couldn't hold against the truth and the courage of two people who refused to give up. In that moment, Jake realized something important. True strength isn't about fighting alone or hiding pain. It's about opening your heart, trusting others, and standing for what's right even when the world pushes back hard. Evelyn and Jake's story didn't end with a perfect happy ending. Life rarely does. But it ended with something just as valuable: healing, forgiveness, and a new beginning. They learned that love can be the greatest weapon and the deepest comfort. And maybe, just maybe, that's the real victory after all.